How you doing, people? This is the Rubin Report. I'm the new Ebola czar, Dave Rubin, and I have two guys with great names. I said it last time they were on together, and they still have great names. Alonso Duralde, Max Lugavere are with me, and I feel a heady, smart, intellectually savvy show, so let's get right to it. So, of course, ISIS released the beheading video of journalist Alan Henning earlier this month. Now it sounds like there may be another beheading today. Today is Wednesday. And at the end of the Alan Henning video, they promised to behead American journalist Peter Kasich. So we'll see if that happens. But interestingly, yesterday, video was released of what appears to be American aid that was supposed to be dropped for the Kurds to fight ISIS. But surprise, surprise, it ended up in ISIS's hands. Let's take a look.
ذخائر، معدات عسكرية، معدات إضافية. هذه بعض الأسلحة العسكرية التي ألقتها القوات الأمريكية للأحزاب اليابجية واليابكية.
Okay, so that hasn't been independently confirmed, so it's a little unclear when exactly that was dropped. Some people are saying some of the stuff may be from somewhere else, but it's clear that a lot of it is American-made. We got a huge situation going on the Turkish-Syrian border in the town Kobane, which is where the Kurds are fighting ISIS. The Turks are kind of fighting the Kurds. Everyone's just fighting everybody. We're sort of bombing people. We don't know what the hell's going on. It's a big freaking mess. Ben Rhodes, who's the White House press secretary, he commented earlier this week about dropping aid and who it's getting to. We feel very confident that we've been able to hit the target in terms of reaching the people we want to reach. What I can assure people is that when we are delivering aid now, we focus it on the people we want to receive that assistance. Those are civilians in need. Those are forces that we're aligned with in the fight against ISIL, and we take precautions to make sure that it's not falling into the wrong hands. And then there's the video that you just saw. So, you know, like every week we do something about ISIS, and it's a big freaking mess, and I feel like we're aiding the wrong people half the time. We don't know who our allies are. People are helping us, they're not helping us. So does any of this surprise you in any way?
Well, you know, this goes back to the whole thing where you had the hawk Republicans in Congress who were like, oh, we're going to support the right Syrian rebels and not the wrong Syrian rebels. And yeah, of course this stuff's going to wind up in the wrong hands. I mean, you know, we armed Al-Qaeda to fight the Russians and then faced our own guns ourselves. This is a history of this stuff.
Yeah, so it's just obvious, like we see these videos, like I saw the video immediately, I was like, of course. This just is so sad.
It's like a bad Homeland episode or something. Yeah, it's definitely, it seems like the sort of early healthcare.gov of military operations. I mean, I can't believe, but there's people, doubters online saying that this is like a falsified video, right? Well, of course, there's all the conspiracy theorists, and if you go to Infowars.com, what's his name? Who's the guy at Infowars? Alex Jones, babbling on about all the conspiracies, and is the CIA really ISIS and all that stuff. Right. I don't know what the hell's going on, but when I see these videos, it makes me realize how important the social media game is. Like, how much do you think that really, you know, we've discussed, can we show these videos? How much of the beheading stuff should be shown? Twitter isn't posting them anymore. How important do you think the social media game is to both sides?
Well, you know, I mean, obviously the game has changed. It's not like where, you know, Osama bin Laden would send his new videotape to the networks and they would hope they would show it. Now it's, everybody's got a direct conduit, and so
that poor guy's out of a job.
Well, you know,
the guy who had to take the tape, and
the press liaison for Al-Qaeda. Yeah, so sadly, no, and so yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen it work in both directions. You know, it can bring to light something like the, you know, the Tahrir Square protests or whatever. But at the same time, yeah, these guys can use it. And I'm sure while Twitter's trying to crack down on it, and I think people are starting to realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't share the beheading video on my Facebook wall. It's still going to be going around, and they've got a direct link to people that they didn't have before.
Yeah, they're using it to recruit too.
Sure.
Yeah, it's scary.
Is this the the inherent problem with sort of doing a half war? Now, I've been against this thing from the beginning. We didn't get congressional authority to go to war in Syria. It was still unclear whether we had that to even do anything in Iraq anymore, but we don't even talk about that anymore. But is this part of it, when you just do airstrikes as opposed to doing more? Not that I'm saying we should do more. That this is what's going to happen, because you're going to bomb people and just drop things, as opposed to having things on the ground where you can literally hand weapons to people or hand food to people, et cetera, et cetera.
You'd think that we'd be capable of more accuracy, what with like drone technology and stuff like that, right?
Are these drones just not that good? We're always afraid of drones, and they're just not that great.
It's crazy to me that we can put a robot on Mars and yet we can't accurately drop ammunition where it needs to be, right?
Yeah. Final thought on this. Do you think the military-industrial complex actually cares where the weapons end up? Because that's the other thing I started thinking, like, you know what, they drop those. Well, that just means they have to drop more for the other guys. So it's like the machine just keeps rolling along.
If they could arm both sides, they would. Yeah. That's where the money is.
I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing.
Scary thought.
I don't think there's any qualms on any part about this.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is a scary thought to end that with. So take what you will with that. All right. Let's move on. Some more ISIS stuff. So there was a 17-year-old from Australia who has now become a new ISIS spokesman. This is crazy. There's been this fascination with Westerners that are becoming spokesmen for ISIS and joining the movement. So we've got some video.
This message I deliver to you, the people of America. I deliver this message to you, the people of Britain. And I deliver this message to you, especially the people of Australia. And I say this about your coalition. You threaten us with this coalition of countries. Bring every nation that you wish to us. Bring every nation that you want to come and fight us. It means nothing to us. Whether it's 50 nations or 50,000 nations, it means nothing to us. Bring your planes. Bring everything you want to us, because it will not harm us. Why? Because we have Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is something that you do not have. To the leaders, to Obama, to Tony Abbott, I say this, these weapons that we have, these soldiers, we will not stop fighting, we will not put down our weapons until we reach your lands, until we take the head of every tyrant, and until the black flag is flying high in every single land, until we put the black flag on top of Buckingham Palace, until we put the black flag on top of the White House. We will not stop, and we will keep on fighting, and we will fight you, and we will defeat you bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Takbir! Takbir!
Okay, so ABC News is reporting that he is Abdullah Elmir, who went missing from West Sydney about 4 months ago. I mean, he's got a crew, he's got a posse, they're into what he's saying. Black flag on top of Buckingham Palace and the White House. So again, we were just talking about the propaganda element of this whole thing. How fearful should we be about these people? Like, that is kind of scary, a room full of these people, and knowing that he's coming from the West and leading this thing.
I never liked pep rallies. I will say that I think the propaganda war is something that we could be waging better in the Middle East. I think that it has become so easy to sort of portray the West and America as the great Satan or whatever, and it might help us to maybe counteract that to some extent, and not make it so easy for these guys to recruit these kind of wide-eyed, easily impressionable young people. I'm a big fan of the Marshall Plan. I'm all about let's show up with butter and not just guns. And I think that there are things we could be doing in the Middle East to sort of rebrand the United States as the people who are constantly putting boots on sacred soil.
Right. So I'm with you, and I used to do a bit about this in my stand-up act. Like, give these people a PlayStation, and they might have something else to do, as opposed to bombing them. Nobody has their house drop on them, and then thinks, I love these guys. Does this sort of show how desperate ISIS is in a way? That they keep pushing this stuff out, like that the fear factor with that thing is bigger than what actually maybe they're accomplishing on the ground?
Well, I mean, I think it definitely makes people uncomfortable. The idea that, nationals with foreign passports could be converted to this Jesus camp for psychopaths and, are out there saying these things. I think it's definitely a scary thing. They're preying on these desperate people, and they're just indoctrinating. I think it's really terrifying.
So what is desperate about this? Because I'm fascinated by this thing where these Westerners, and often a lot of the ones, especially from England, they're middle class. Some of them are upper middle class. Some of them from France also. So they're not that desperate in the way we think of desperate, like that they're destitute or homeless and have nowhere else to turn. A lot of them are middle class people, kids, I mean, 16, 17-year-olds. So what is it about this thing that's appealing to them?
You ever talk to a 17-year-old who
They're
just
the
found
worst.
Jesus?
They're
I mean,
the worst.
come on.
Yeah.
No, fanaticism knows no socioeconomic level. And so if you have people who are dissatisfied with their life or their parents or whatever, and it's easy to push them into any kind of movement that claims to have all the answers, that makes them feel important, and it just so happens that the one that these guys have latched onto is ISIS,
right?
And that's what's happening right now. I mean, I think that you see similar activities from similar disaffected youth, in all kinds of places, just the other ones aren't carrying guns and posting videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I guess maybe at 16, 17, I was thinking more about sex and drugs and video games and basketball. That I don't know that something like this, where they would have taken all those things away from me, would have appealed to me. So I don't know. That's the part that I'm having. Like, I get your point, but that's the part that I can't really get around. Like, so what appeals to these guys about not having these freedoms? That's the part I can't
you were
get.
saying that a lot of them are upper middle class. I think that for a lot of people who have been raised in, relative comfort and luxury, if you can sell them on a sort of radical fundamentalist fill-in-the-blank religious path, then that's a means of rebellion, and that's, all of my cushy stuff is terrible, and how dare you give this to me, parents, and that's as much of a weapon as anything else.
Yeah, I guess I'm pro-cushy stuff. I feel like you're pro. We're all pro-cushy
no
stuff.
questions.
No one's joining ISIS around here.
My first thought when I watched the video was that it was Jonah from Tonga, the Chris Lilly show. I mean, he has same accent, same disenfranchised sort of. I feel like we could learn a lot from that show.
Get this guy a rap contract, and I think he might.
Something there. Do you think that these people that leave countries like Australia and France and the U.S. and Britain and everything, should be allowed to come back? That's a debate right now in Congress, although Congress isn't really working, but that seems to be a debate right now. Should we allow these people to leave and then come back into the country? I don't think it's that crazy to say, no, if you go fight for ISIS, you have to give up your passport.
I think we send Kerry from Homeland to turn them and they become double agents.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, forget it.
Would you let these people back in? I mean, all these countries are debating this. Should these people be allowed to come back? I don't even see how that's a debate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if there's like evidence that they've bought into a psychopathic murderous terrorist ideology like ISIL, I think no, passport revoked.
If you've threatened the head of your own government, then I'd say pretty much that's you've thrown your passport on the ground and spit on it. That's kind of how that works.
Right-wing nutbags here on the Rubin Report this week. Okay, let's move on. You're not going to believe this, but Americans do not trust the media. The media is doing such a good job all the time. People don't trust them. I don't know why. Pew Research came out with a poll, which news organizations are trustworthy and not trustworthy. Let's take a look. So believe it or not, CNN, the most trusted name in news, that's what they tell us they are. They are the most trusted, according to Pew. 54% of respondents believe that CNN is trustworthy. Only 20% said untrustworthy. And then, you see the other big networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, all kind of hovering around the 50 to 46 area. Then the cable news ones jump in a little bit less. I thought the one that was interesting here, Fox News 44%, MSNBC 38%, so I guess it depends who you like as to who you trust. New York Times down at 34%. And then some of the other interesting ones, Daily Show. Everyone says the young people get their information from the Daily Show, but only 16% of these respondents said they trust the Daily Show, 15% for Colbert. Hannity and Limbaugh not doing well, 12%. They're screaming all the time and they're not doing that well. Drudge Report, only 8%. And then finally, I want to stop with BuzzFeed, only 2%. I get a lot of stories from BuzzFeed for this show at this point, and I generally think they're pretty good. It's only 2%. They're like the hip, cool thing now. They're even partnered with CNN, who's #1 on this list. So
BuzzFeed told me that the Gilmore Girls character I was Suki, and clearly I'm Gypsy, so I don't trust them anymore.
That does make sense. So it's those self-reported polls, guys.
What is the demographic that was polled? Because I think that's something that's important.
True,
what if they were polling all sort of older people? And obviously older people don't watch or trust the Daily Show as much as millennials. But yeah, it's interesting that CNN would be the most trusted, yet it always comes in second or third in relation to Fox in terms of viewership.
Yeah,
right?
People have a weird thing with CNN, right? Like, I feel like the reason I make fun of CNN so much is because I want it to be better. You know what I mean? Like, we all know what Fox News is on the right, and we know what MSNBC is on the left. So when I watch television, I want to trust something. Yeah. So then when they do all the ridiculous plane coverage, or just the endless 24-hour news cycle, when they have nothing to report on, then they say, we're not going to speculate, and they spend the next hour speculating. I always want them to be better. I think that's partly what's going on here. People are saying, well, I trust them, but it's just, I trust them the most out of all this other shit.
It's successful branding. I think people like the idea of CNN more than they like CNN, more than they watch CNN.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this idea of it being kind of the way people used to think of the New York Times as the paper of record, you know, the gray lady. Yeah. You know, I think CNN has that kind of like Bayer aspirin brand trustworthiness, even though people are actually buying the, you know, the generic because it's cheaper.
Yeah, I agree. What do you guys make of the fact that all the digital stuff is so low? So BuzzFeed that we talked about, but all of them. I mean, HuffPo, TYT wasn't even on there. I mean, why is it that all this stuff is so low? Because to me, it seems like online is actually the last bastion where you can get some freedom and some honesty, and yet people are still reporting that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem with digital media. It's that like everybody is just looking for, you know, everybody's just, all these like publishing organizations like BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, they're just pumping out clickbait more and more, and I think that compromises the quality of the reporting.
Yeah. And again, I think you're going on your point from before. I'd like to see who got this poll, who did Pew ask, because you know, if they're 25 to 38 or higher than that, then yeah, they're not going to be watching the Daily Show. They're not going to be getting news online. But I'd say younger certainly are.
Pew should do a poll on trustworthy polls. That would give us something there. How do you guys decide who to trust? I mention this every week that I don't know what to trust anymore, who to trust. Well, I go to all these sites, I watch all these news things, and usually by the end of any report, I'm thinking that was half bullshit. Every article, you know, how do you decide who to get your news from in a way that makes sense to you?
You know, sadly, like most people, I think I probably just whatever matches my, you know, the bias that I brought into it in the first place. But, you know, much like any Fox News watcher, just it's a different bias.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to, if I'm interested in a topic, I'll look at its Wikipedia, for one, to get a 30,000-foot sort of broad gist of what's going on. And then I spend a lot of time on Google. Yeah, try to form my own hypothesis of whatever that issue is.
Yeah.
But again, like I go to CNN.com. I think CNN is great. Again, you know, I think that they're already awesome. I think their potential is limitless.
Do you guys think that the biggest problem we have in America is the failure of the media? You know, we talk about money in politics all the time, and I know all this stuff is interconnected, and our politicians are all bought, and nobody's honest, and blah, blah, blah. But that the media has just utterly failed us, so we don't even have an informed public to have the proper debates, which maybe explains why these numbers are all so terrible.
Well, we lost Ben Bradley this week, you know, who was one of the great bastions of you know, journalism at its peak in this country, or one of its zeniths. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the corporatization of news, the fact that, you know, what network told us 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, you know, about how when news and entertainment combine, when news has to get ratings, when news has to sell advertising, then yeah, then it becomes another show. And, you know, I think given that, you know, when you look at what does Rupert Murdoch own, and what does, you know, these very small handfuls of people who control a great deal of the mass media, obviously there's going to be a filtration process where, you know, I wonder sometimes even, I love Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and I think, is she really going to tell me about GE, you know?
Of course, and all the contracts that they have with military things, and you know, it never sort of ends.
I think the problem is, like, when you ask people what it is that they want, they'll usually say vegetables, but if you watch them quietly, they'll go for the candy instead. And I think that people just need to be more sort of proactive and vocal about the kind of news that they want.
Yeah.
You know?
Well said. Good ending on that one. All right, so yes, we all agree cable news is absolutely terrible, and it's hard to decide who is the worst on cable news, but the Washington Free Beacon put together this little compilation of Al Sharpton, and take it away.
I don't think it's divided at all.
It's not divided at all?
Make some friends.
Make some friends?
We're the party of equality.
The party of equality?
U.S. policy has changed.
U.S. policy has changed?
We are seeing at the same time liberty under assault.
Liberty is under assault?
The Democrats are feeling the heat.
Democrats are feeling the heat.
I didn't expect that was going to be my lifetime's work.
He didn't expect it to be his lifetime's work.
I think that will be the demise of our republic.
The demise of our republic?
I'm not for giving ducks and deer weapons to shoot back at me.
Giving ducks and deer weapons to shoot back at you. What does that even mean?
I think they're cooking the books on this.
Cooking the books?
In the way of the people's priorities.
The people's priorities?
Nor do I recall anyone believing that.
He doesn't recall anyone believing that?
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your question.
We have a weak and indecisive president that invites aggression.
The president invites aggression?
It would be a dream come true.
A dream come true. It's time to move beyond this. It's time to move beyond this.
A trained ape could get a status of forces agreement.
A trained ape? Really? 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 Really?
Really, really.
Okay.
Wow.
That is, I mean, that goes on and on. Al Sharpton is just absolutely terrible, but he's just one of the many on cable news that are absolutely terrible. He might be the worst. So let's just start there. I mean, we were all cracking up as we were watching that. How is that even, how does a producer sit there with him and, yeah, please.
See, I blame the producer on this. I think the producers and the writers, like, that worked once, and they're like, oh, let's do that thing where he says the last 4 words as a question. I don't know that I blame Al Sharpton on this one.
Wow.
Just because I think for the most part, I think generally a lot of the talking heads on cable news are just reading the monitor.
Oh, of course they're just reading the monitor, but you know what, if it's your name on the show, then I know, you know, like I'm held to...
I'm not saying he's innocent in all this, but I'm just saying he did not work alone.
I think regardless, that clip wins the internet. Like, I have to thank you. It's like, that's the funniest thing I've seen in a while.
Who do you is there anyone off the top of your head on any of the networks that you can think is worse? Because I watch him every...
Almost anyone on Fox.
Almost anyone?
Let's not get crazy here. Yeah.
So who do you like then? That's a more controversial topic than who sucks. We can agree that pretty much they're all terrible. I got a couple that I think are pretty decent. I'm going to hold them in my pocket.
Again, I like Rachel Maddow a lot. I like Melissa Harris Perry. I liked Chris Hayes on Saturday and Sunday morning more than I like him on weeknights. I don't know what that's about, but that's just a thing.
I have trouble watching because he seems like a little kid and they just put glasses on him to make him look smart. But I know he's a nice guy.
He and Ezra Klein and Marcus Malitzas all look like the sharpest minds on the 8th grade debate team. I don't know what it is about those guys. They are so perpetually dewy.
Yeah. I'll give props to one guy on CNN, Jake Tapper. I actually think is a good reporter, and he does it good in the studio, and then he goes out in the field and does it. But do we give too much credit for all these people? And I say that with all due whatever, because I'm sitting here, we're online, but I'm doing the same thing. But do we put too much stock in that they really, at the end of the day, are just entertainers more than reporters? We've sort of got that. They're not really reporters, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that their job is to make the perception that there is a commotion, because that's what draws viewers.
Yeah.
Where it just sort of like it activates our amygdala, which is like our emotional center, the fear center of the brain, because that's what people. That's what. It's not good for us so much, but it's good for ratings.
Yeah.
So
why do some people terrible people just stick around? Like someone like Al Sharpton, who's been terrible for like 30 years and has done so much awful shit, and is so biased and clearly not a good broadcaster. Why do terrible people just stay around?
People
don't disappear.
It's what is it, the Peter principle, right? That everyone rises to the level of their own incompetence. I don't know. I mean, why is Lindsey Graham still a seated congressman? It's amazing the people who have failed to the top, and certainly cable news isn't any different. I think that I'm sure their Q ratings are good. They probably test market well, or they focus group or whatever. They solidly hit their demo of 39-year-old denture wearing retired. Some things, I don't know. You got me.
I just feel like when the cameras are rolling, the last thing you want to be is tepid and benign, especially on TV when, time is money.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I do think that has a lot to do with it, that you're not going to get measured people that are going to show both sides, because yes, then Huffington Post doesn't write about what they say and everybody wants clicks. So then that inherently kind of destroys the truth. Right. But we're not done with cable news just yet. So Fox News had a clip. This is a 10-second clip, and I think that this pretty much sums up everything that you need to know about cable news. We got this from Mediaite. Take a look.
Like a card trick that you've seen 10 times.
Guys, bottom line is, in race after race,
third card trick.
in race after race, Democrats are ahead of Republicans when it comes to women.
Winning over women in Colorado.
Is that real?
That is real, Max. That is real.
I feel bad for the closed captioners at moments like that. They're just like, forget it, I'm done.
This. I mean, okay, that is just awful. So you're seeing the head of the DNC, the head of the RNC, and they're just, let's just watch it again. Can we just watch it again?
Like a card trick that you've seen 10 times.
Guys, bottom line is, in race after race,
third card trick.
in race after race, Democrats are ahead of Republicans when it comes to women.
Winning over women in Colorado.
I don't know. Look, I do a show like that. I have done this now. I don't know how many times we've done this. 50. We've done this. I don't know, 80 shows or something. A lot of clips are up there. Like, I've been able to manage so that people aren't just. Now again, I don't have. Okay,
women in Colorado.
Yeah. Is that partly that because they just are doing talking points, right? Debbie Wasserman Schultz is doing talking points. Reince Priebus is doing talking points. So because of that, that inherently makes them just talk instead of listening. There's no listening going on at that table, right?
Yeah, no one ever answers the question they're asked. They come preloaded with whatever it is they wanted to say.
Case in point, the Ben Affleck thing on Bill Maher that you did a brilliant job in dissecting.
We'll link to that thing right there. It was brilliant, brilliant.
Brilliant.
Is part of this also just the way we are wired, that really we are wired for controversy? You were talking about this a little bit in the previous segment, but that we have a left brain and a right brain. So it's like we can only sort of deal with two talking points. So the more extreme that they are, the more it sort of fits into the way we can comprehend things.
Yeah, because it leads to, it basically takes the onus off of us for having to do our own thinking. When we have people that have a perspective and can sort of like lead the pack, so to speak. It also is very, our already sort of overworked amygdala is the fear center of the brain. I think it definitely appeals to that sort of tendency to be alarmed, that fight or flight, mechanism that we have. And so I think that's why people gravitate towards those sorts of clips.
Well, like you were saying, I think a lot of the cable hosts are less journalists now than they are sort of Ed Sullivan, instead of like, here's the Beatles, and here's Topo Gigio, like, here's Ebola, and here's Benghazi. It's like, it's all about, not enough to bore you. I'm going to keep you entertained and keep throwing things at you that are going to excite you. And if you don't like this one, you'll like the next one. You know?
Do you guys think that the average viewer realizes that that's actually not news, that that's purely propaganda? If you put up the head of one party and the head of another party, and then just have them babble on that stuff that's written right in front of them, that's actually not news. People watch that Fox News Sunday. It sounds like it's a news program, but all you're doing is just handing out propaganda on both sides. And then because they give 2 points of view, everyone thinks it's equal, right?
Yeah, the idea, first of all, that's been one of the great thing you talked about. Why is the news terrible now? This idea of parody that okay, because we're talking to this rational, sensible person about global warming, we now also have to talk about this oil company shill to make sure that we're being equal. You know,
and then there's never any analysis after. This happens constantly. I see this even with Anderson Cooper, who everyone loves. They'll do that exact thing. So it's you got the scientist for global warming, then you got this oil guy, and then they both spout their thing, and then he's like, all right, and we're going to commercial. But it's like, no, we got to now analyze what did we just see.
The worst about that.
Oh, that guy couldn't improv his way out of a wet paper bag. Let's just watch the clip one more time.
Oh my God.
Like a card trick that you've seen 10 times.
Bottom line is, in race after race,
third card trick.
In race after race, Democrats are ahead of Republicans when it comes to women.
Winning over women in Colorado.
I really thought it was a great segment, and we're doing a hell of a show, and it's a good time to. All right, I love this story, and I think this is going to be right in Alonso's wheelhouse. Comic Alliance put together a list of the superhero movies, a timeline of the superhero movies for the next 6 years. That's going to get us to 2020. And there are a boatload of superhero movies coming out. Let's take a look. Okay, so in 2014, we actually only have one more. We've only got a couple months of the year left. Big Hero 6, which I'm told, Alonso, my people tell me you saw already.
I did.
Even though it's not out yet.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to hint us about it?
I liked it.
You liked it.
Go read my review at the wrap.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, 2015, we're going to get the next Avengers, then Ant-Man, Fantastic Four. Now, interestingly, Fantastic Four, the comic book, they just announced that the comic book is dying or dead, or they're killing it in like a month or something. Deadpool, Batman, Superman, next Captain America, another X-Men, et cetera, et cetera. Then we got Wonder Woman in 2017, another Wolverine. They've done like 87 of those. Sinister Six, which I think is going to be an offshoot of Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken. Fantastic Four 2 in 2017. Then we'll just skip ahead. Then we got their Justice League. I mean, it just goes on and on. You guys can all look at this yourselves. Venom's getting his own. That's another Spider-Man offshoot. Lego Batman, I guess from the Lego movies, people liked him, right? Then I like this one. Marvel in May of 2018 is just doing unknown movie, and then they're following it up in July with another unknown movie, and then another one in July, another unknown, but it's at least going to be in the X-Men universe. So obviously, yeah.
You got to own that weekend early.
Yeah, you have to.
Just put, I'm putting a peg on the calendar, and I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to be a thing. So
yeah.
Everybody else stay away.
So as a movie guy, when you see this, now I generally love all these movies. A couple of them, I'll see, and I don't really like the Fantastic Four that they're now rebooting. I didn't like the original two, but pretty much I like all these.
I have liked more of these movies than I have not liked.
Yeah.
For the most part, I grew up reading comic books. I'm not averse to comic book movies, superheroes. But when you see it all listed out like that, I have to admit, part of me as a film critic just thinks, it's like, because nobody ever sat down and said, like, here is every romantic comedy you're going to see for the next 5 years. That nobody plans that kind of thing. But boy, just the idea of all of those sequels and re-threads, and I mean, they're rebooting Green Lantern in 2020. I guess that'll be a long enough time for the stench of the Ryan Reynolds one to go away, which I didn't hate.
Yeah.
So look, they're making money. There was a really interesting piece in the LA Times recently about how the reason that the potato famine happened in Ireland was because they were a one-crop economy, and when that one crop fails, you are fucked.
Yeah.
And Hollywood has become a one-crop economy, and that's it. That's the crop, and they're making movies now, and those movies are making money now. But when they stop making money, then what?
Okay, so I'm totally glad you brought that up, because it seems to me that this is all we can create anymore in America. We lost all our manufacturing jobs, right? We don't have much. We're not creating much, but one thing we can do, and that we still do basically well, is the blockbuster movie. So the studios sort of have to do this, right?
Because they can sell it in China.
Yeah. Speaking of selling in China, Transformers 4, I did my review on it. I saw your review on it. Can we make sure that Michael Bay does not? How do we do this? How do we set it up so that
again, his movies keep making money, so we're stuck with it.
There's nothing we can do.
Really good trailers. There was a good trailer.
Yeah, that's all of his movies are. They're 3-hour trailers.
Disaster. Where do you fall on these superhero movies? You dig them?
I love. I'm with you guys. I love superhero movies. I'm excited that DC is getting some more love these days. And I think. I mean, I tend to prefer when they are a little more serious in nature, like the Dark Knight series. The trilogy is still like one of my favorite things that's ever been made. But yeah, it is weird seeing them all sort of laid out like that. But I think that like the big franchise nature, of Hollywood, investing so much into the, sort of tried and true, also kind of paves the way for more sort of unique films, I feel like. I mean, this was a really good year for film. We had Gone Girl, which was awesome, Boyhood, which we were talking about before. And then Birdman, which I just saw, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So. And even within the framework of these things, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, who would have thought that was going to be like a comic book that not a lot, even comic book nerds were sort of like, wait, which one was that one?
Right.
So they're at least thinking like, okay, we have this brand, we have a fairly built-in audience, we can maybe play with this a little bit. And so if they continue to do that, then that's exciting, and that has possibilities. And I think that I would be maybe a little more excited about the DC stuff if Zack Snyder weren't directing so many of them, but that's neither here nor there. But no, I mean,
it's here or there. It might be both for this conversation.
But these are characters that have worked and that for a lot of people have a lot of meaning and could be turned into something really fun. But I just worry that there's so much of it in such a concentrated period of time that they're daring us to get sick of it, basically.
Yeah. But is there, to just play devil's advocate on that, is there possibly, because of the way the studios are doing this and the way that they're laying this out in advance, that they're able to make the worlds much bigger. I mean, that seems to be what they're doing. They give you a little plot point. So in Spider-Man 2, for example, you already had the plot of that the Sinister Six were already coming. So there is some foresight, which is nice, as opposed to just throwing out one movie and then trying to figure out a sequel that really just,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, I bet if Marvel had its druthers, they would own all of their characters. But for a long time, they were licensing them out here and there. And so you had like a Daredevil movie that had nothing to do with the Spider-Man movie, that had nothing to do with the X-Men movie, that had nothing to do with the Fantastic Four movie. So now they're sort of this is really going back to the 60s and the Marvel universe when it was originally created. The idea that there would be this interlocking continuity of all this stuff. Even DC kind of followed Marvel's lead on that one. And so yeah, if they want to expand out the cinematic universe and have the Avengers meet the Guardians of the Galaxy and have Doctor Strange meet Spider-Man, whatever, sure. Again, I mean, there's certainly potential there, but there's also the potential to just, if we have to see another goddamn origin story, that we're all going to shoot ourselves in the face.
Right. Like, I get it. He was bit by a radioactive spider. You got to show me another way. What does it say about us that comic books are dying while this stuff is blowing up? That's just like, things are changing. What are you going to do?
They're on paper.
They're on paper. Like, is that? But you get them on iPad now, I'm sure. Right?
I think it's just that like people crave myth, and it doesn't matter the medium. It's just that like for today, the way stories, the amazing way in which stories are now able to be told in cinema, I think, has sort of displaced, our attention, our necessity for comics, which I think is like sad, but. It's definitely...
And comic books have been dying for 40 years. I mean, you look at the numbers they were getting in the 60s, even like a romance comic, which is back when they were actually gearing comic books to, female readers, giant numbers. And then over time, the movies get bigger, and you had your Superman movie and your Batman stuff, whatever, but the numbers are constantly shrinking. You'll occasionally get some cult item like, Frank Miller doing The Dark Knight or Watchmen or something. And then, there was that awful period in the 90s where they became Beanie Babies and everybody was buying up foil embossed #1 issue that then became useless because everybody owned them and they were worth nothing. So I mean, it's constantly been the numbers have always been in decline, but I think it would be nice if these movies would drive some traffic to the comic book store. I don't know that necessarily is happening, but at least it's keeping the publishers alive, the money they're making off of these movies.
Right. All right. Well, thank you guys for taking a little time from your busy superhero movie schedule to tune in with us. All right, let's move on. I really like this story. So this was on Yahoo. They are saying that wearable technology, like the Apple Watch, it's going to have its day. We know its day is coming. The Apple Watch is coming in January, and that this type of stuff is going to, stick around for a little while. But that ultimately this is all going to the technology being embedded in us. So they had an interesting article that we're going to link to right down below with 9 technologies that are going to be part of our human body, and we're going to go through a couple of them right now. The first, implantable smartphone. Yeah, that looks a little scary. Hopefully they're going to get it to the place where it's not going to be that obvious. But scientists are working on eye implants that let an image be captured with the blink and transmitted to any local storage. Images might be displayed through artificial skin in your eye implants. All right, so hopefully you're not going to have a giant patch of discolored skin on your arm, but I guess getting the phone actually embedded into us at this point, it kind of seems obvious, doesn't it? Like the watch to me almost seems ridiculous at this point because it's going to do less than the thing we have in our pocket. So just putting the phone in us, it's coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, think about the degree to which we've bonded psychologically with our technology. I mean, we haven't yet bonded physically, but we will. It's coming. And I think that, I think only good stuff is going to come of that. It's going to allow us to measure, an infinite number of, biometric qualities, which we can then use to improve. So I'm excited for the health implications for sure.
Well, I'm going to get to my robots are taking over later, but I know you're going positive to start. The next one, cyber pills that will talk to your doctor. A British research team is developing cyber pills with microprocessors that can text doctors directly from inside your body. So basically you'll have these things inside of you, and if there's something wrong with one of your organs or something, the doctors will find out immediately. That seems pretty good, right? Technology can kind of help with the health stuff, right?
As long as my cyber pill doesn't get spammed. I get a lot of calls on my cell phone offering me carpet cleaning and virus protection. So.
Yeah. Cyber, you're down with this. This help. You're into the medical stuff. And
I mean, I've been lately obsessed with the microbiome. Have you guys heard of that? It's basically the universe of microorganisms that live in your gut that outnumber your own cells 10 to 1, and it's got so many implications on our health outcomes that it's just like mind-blowing, and we're just at the very tip of the iceberg in terms of like understanding the interplay between that and our health.
Wait, does this have something to do with the poop thing that everybody's talking about? It does have something to do with that?
Yeah.
We got to do a story on that. Can you break it down in like 2 sentences?
Yeah, so
you basically put someone else's...
So there's a bacterial infection that kills, I think, 14,000 people in the US yearly, for which there is no cure, and they found a cure, and that cure is really gross: fecal transplants. And it's a very rudimentary way of tinkering with the microbiome of these people that have these kinds of infections by basically replacing what they have going on with the microbiome of a healthy person. And so this is what it looks like today. And 5 years from now, it's not going to be that. It's going to be like specific, bacteria that can then help. But again, we're at the very sort of beginning of all this stuff, and I think having those kinds of smart pills that you can swallow and analyze what's going on in your intestines, I think that's really cool.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to smart tattoos. Researchers have crafted an implantable skin mesh of computer fibers thinner than human hair that can monitor your body's inner workings from the surface. A chip has been made that can be embedded in a finger through a tattoo-like process, letting you unlock things or enter codes simply by pointing. So I thought this one was kind of interesting because just this week Apple Pay was released, and this is just what you're going to do on your phone, but soon enough it's going to be your finger. So we all saw this coming, right? Once they started with the Touch ID, that was just the one step for your fingerprint, and then Apple Pay. So the next thing is just
so now muggers will be cutting your hand off. That's great.
Well, in Minority Report, remember they had to take the eye out. I mean, it all makes sense, right?
I mean, just think about like the iWatch. That's something that we've got to actually like strap on our wrists. That tattoo could potentially make it something that we have on us all the time.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's move on. Smart dust, full computers, each much smaller than a grain of sand, that can organize themselves inside the body into as-needed networks to power a whole range of complex internal processes. With smart dust, doctors will be able to act inside your body without opening you up. This one's going a little bit over my head. I just sort of kept picturing like those scenes in the Matrix where you just see the Matrix like create something. Yeah. How off am I on this one? You got anything?
I mean, this is the dawn of the nanotech revolution, right? Like, we're going to be able to materialize things from thin air. We're doing it sort of with 3D printing. I mean, it's a very sort of rudimentary form, but I think it's basically capitalizing on the fact that technology is becoming infinitely smaller, faster, and cheaper, and so eventually we'll be able to like inhale smart robots that repair cellular damage, things like that. I mean,
okay, it's nice that you're excited about this
He's
stuff.
Very excited.
I have two issues. One, aren't our cell phones already giving us all cancer? Like, I mean, do we really want one actually inside of our body now?
Yeah. Don't worry, I've got all the bad things at the end. I'm just playing along with him.
And then the other thing being, of course, is that people are already walking into traffic looking at this crap. Like, now they're going to be staring at their arm. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they won't be staring at their arm because their eyes will be replaced with something that will you'll see the, or you have the
but
contact
they still will be
lens.
watching traffic is my point here.
The robotic cars.
I don't know. I for one feel like I always want to embrace the idea of what people call the technology Shabbat. Where they take one day of the week where they turn off all their screens and they don't go online and they don't check their texts.
That's smart.
And I can't do it. I would like to, but I haven't gotten there yet. But I mean, once it's in you, there is no Shabbat ever. Like it is, you are constantly connected.
Yeah. Don't eat ham on that day. Also. All right, one more for you. The verified self. The U.S. military has serious programs to equip soldiers with implanted RFID chips, so keeping track of troops becomes automatic and worldwide. This technology could be used to ID every single human being. So this one doesn't seem that off to me. I mean, I could see this. Obviously, there's military purposes. But now let's get to some of the scary stuff. So then we already have this whole Big Brother thing and the NSA thing. So now we are going to be walking around with this stuff where we'll be able to be ID'd all the time. They will be able to track us all the time. It's not just going to be the device. It's going to be built in us. So as someone that loves technology, and I love all this stuff too, but I always, I watch a lot of sci-fi movies, so I always veer to that place where something is going to go wrong with it. Can you give me some comfort in all this stuff?
I mean, I think that there are always going to be speed bumps and hiccups on the way to, radical transformation. But, I mean, look at the fappening. That was a horrible thing that happened to these, starlets due to them having crazy amounts of personal information on their phones, right? But
yes, it took me a second to figure out what you were talking about. Really? Yeah, all the celebrities that got their naked, the fappening, got it. Okay, yeah.
I mean, that was an awful thing, but I think that because of that, we're going to have enhanced algorithms, better security features. So.
I'm just imagining these seedy David Cronenberg back alley operations where people have to get their little doohickey removed so they can't be followed by the cops and maybe replaced with a dead person so that they, are off the grid now.
See, you've watched as many sci-fi movies as me.
This is all like Existenz that's happening here. We all have ports in the back of our spine or whatever, this just gives me the creeps. And what's hilarious is, if you go back and watch the first Charlie's Angels movie, the big bad guy's plan is that he's going to have a program that will be able to track everyone on Earth by their cell phone. That's happening now.
That's happening right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you guys hear that? There is a drone right above us right now because they know where.
I just think that life is so much more colorful thanks to the cognitive prosthetics that we already have that are in our pockets, Yeah. And I don't know, the more advanced and efficient they can become and the more that we can integrate them in a meaningful way, I think the better.
All right, there you have it. So technology is coming, and hopefully we can use it for some good. But of course, there's going to be some bad, so let's not freak out. How was that? I gave us a decent.
Yeah, awesome.
That was a decent.
Enjoy your tumors.
Yeah. All right, one more for you. I thought this was really, really cool. There is a Kickstarter to create the hoverboard. Of course, everyone knows the hoverboard from Back to the Future 2, and they are actually making it. Let's take a look. Okay, so the hoverboard is going to work using magnets, much like a Japanese bullet train. We should tell you, though, it's not going to work on all surfaces. So much like when Marty McFly went over the water and it stopped working, yeah, they're going to have to be special parks for this to be used, and they have a mock-up of one of the parks. So it just looks really cool. I just like this story just because I loved Back to the Future. I love Back to the Future 2. I even like Back to the Future 3. I know that's controversial, but I liked it. So I just love these kinds of stories. Are we going to have hoverboards soon? And when can I get one?
I would ride the shit out of one of them. I mean, they look really fun. I think calling them hoverboards is a bit of a stretch because it's more of like a maglev thing, right? Then you need the special sort of metallic substrate on which to ride it. But it looks fun.
Yeah. Is there something else from a movie that you wish existed? For me, that's the one from my childhood. Like, I remember everybody talking about that all the time. You know, I guess you want the time machine would be nice. Sure. But if you can't have the time machine, the hoverboard, is there something else from a movie?
I think the transporter from Star Trek.
That would be a good one.
Yeah.
That would be a good one.
Because Coach sucks. If I get stuck in another American Airlines seat, like every time I think, oh, it's a transporter.
It's
like a transporter.
Max, when can he look forward to finding a transporter?
Man, 5 years. Exponential growth.
Gonna hold you to that.
Yeah.
I'm way too fat for the hoverboard. That's not happening. Personal injury attorneys everywhere they're very excited, I'm sure, about the invention of this thing.
Yeah. What do you think? Is there something from a movie that?
The tricorder. But we're almost there, right? We were just talking about wearable technology. Yeah. That thing that's able to like analyze health problems that you have just by like scanning you.
What movie are we talking about? Oh, so that's been in a bunch of movies. So it was in Star Trek. Yeah. It was in what was the one with Matt Damon? The last one.
Oh, Elysium.
It was in Elysium, right? A couple others. Yeah. It's all about health with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into it, you know?
Yeah. All right, guys, that was quick. I just wanted to show you that real quick because I thought it was really cool. Follow Alonso and Max. Their Twitters are right down below. And barring any sort of robot revolution or anything like that, we'll do this again next week. Thanks for watching.